I think there's something beautiful about creating for yourself and for yourself alone. For me, creativity has always been a way to transform feelings and thoughts into something external, to create a way to get my feelings out of my body. And creativity for me has always been a great tool for exploring thoughts and feelings in a really structured way. And I think it's really helpful. I think every person has an incredible amount of stuff, either that they've created that they've never shown anybody, or ideas that they really want to create that they haven't maybe had the time or opportunity to create. And I think we can often suffer the consequences of feeling like everything we share or everything we create has to be shared with an audience. It has to have an audience in order to have value. And I don't necessarily think that that's actually true. And I think that the act of creating in itself is the purpose of creating. And I think that if you create something and people want to share it or people like it, then that's fantastic, right? But it shouldn't be the sole purpose of creating. I've written lots of music and I've written a novel that I've never shown anybody. I don't know if it's very good, but the process isn't really about showing it to people. I think sometimes creativity is a way to have a playful conversation with ourselves. And I think creativity, in whatever shape it may be, whether it's writing, whether it's creating music, whether it's painting, drawing, having an outlet, having a way to express your feelings through your body, I think can only be helpful. And I think the difficulty is creating and expecting people to love it. And sometimes they don't, right? Like, I've made loads of music that nobody has cared about. I've never really shown anybody my writing because it's not really for them. And I think that's the most important part of creativity is being creative is a privilege. It's not just a privilege because you get to be creative, but it's a privilege in that you get to experience yourself in a different way. So I encourage everybody to be creative. Everybody can be creative. It's just how and when and how it shows up for you. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. I read a book about 15 years ago now called Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. And the book was incredible. And it really inspired me, and I went off and I wrote a novel based on one of the short stories in that book. And I think what's fascinating about it is I never wrote that because I wanted to show it to anybody. I think I wrote it because the story unlocked something in me and I needed an outlet for that thing to manifest. And I think that's what's so fascinating about writing, about music, about everything, is that it unlocks something in us. It unlocks an opportunity for us to have a conversation with ourselves. And the good thing is sometimes those conversations don't have words. And I think that's what's so fascinating about art is it doesn't have to use language. Sometimes it can use metaphor. It can just be purely visual. It can just be sound based. But it is about evoking and unlocking and processing and transforming pain or joy or whatever emotion we feel into something that is outside of us. And I think once it's outside of us, then we can do something about it. Then we can assess it in an objective way. Because I think it's sometimes when a feeling is inside us and it's just rolling around, it can become tremendously daunting or it can be overwhelming. So creativity and using the alchemy of your body to get something out of yourself and put it into the world, it's a good thing. I think I don't think it's a bad thing. And also it's quite humbling as well, because if you carry an idea for too long in your mind, you can build it up into something so huge and incredibly large that it becomes impossible to execute, and it can only become disappointing. So I think being creative often and doing small things and really enjoying those things and not having to show them to anybody but you're the audience is really good. I think when I worked on that book and I never showed it to anybody, It was really a way for me to answer some questions around what I needed or who I was, or processing my past or whatever it was. But it was a really, really good thing. And I do think that creating for yourself is a kind of therapy. It's intentional. You can start to build structure around your feelings, your thoughts, your experience, your hopes and aspirations, right? It's really important to create for yourself because it's not about impressing others. It's really just about enjoying yourself, enjoying where you're at, enjoying your process. Look, some days you're going to make something and you'll be like, wow, that's amazing. And then you'll wake up the next day and think, oh my God, that's terrible. But that's yours. It's yours and it's private. Nobody else can have that experience because it exists for you. I encourage you to create. I encourage you to create for nobody else but yourself, and try to see what can happen. So look, some creations are supposed to stay hidden. And my phone is filled up with hundreds of bits of music and sketches and ideas that I have. And my girlfriend is probably the only person who gets to hear them. And in a way, that's a privilege that we share together. And there's lots of work and creativity that she does that she never shows to anybody. And I get to experience that. And I think that's a really, really beautiful thing. And sharing your creativity with the people who matter most to you is wonderful, I think. They get to bear witness to who you are. And look, I never shared that novel. And maybe I never will. Who knows what the future holds. But that's not the point. I think the point is that it was the process that mattered. It was the process of creating that thing that really helped me. It helped me process, reflect, and grow. And I think that's the beauty of creating for yourself. It doesn't need to be validated by anyone else. And if you're worried about writing, don't show it to anybody. It makes writing much more pleasurable when you don't have to show it to anybody. And I think the process of growing and developing as a human is about taking yourself seriously, but in a playful way. And I think when we do things in private, we can experiment, we can play and we can experiment, and sometimes it's terrible. And sometimes we just have to laugh at ourselves for even trying. But once in a while, something amazing can happen. And the idea is that those amazing moments, the more you practice the creative aspect of yourself, the more those amazing moments present themselves. And then maybe at some point you might feel comfortable sharing, but that's never the point of anything creative. It's more about the internal alchemy of yourself. And I think as a therapist, encouraging anybody to be creative for themselves is probably the most important part of any process, because we are creating ourselves when we are creating these objects, these moments, these sounds, whatever you want to do. So I guess the question is, what's something you're creating that you haven't shown anybody? Or maybe a practice that you have that you keep private, or it's a ritual that you do. Everybody has something, right? So look, I just wanted to share this today because I think creating is a process of self-creation as well. And just starting in any way, any small way is valuable. And you don't have to show it to anybody. So don't feel like everything you do has to have an audience. Sometimes the process and you experiencing it and you being it is enough. So look, have a great Friday, and I will no doubt be up in your YouTube feed sometime soon with some more stuff. So I look forward to it. Take care. Have a great weekend.